Welcome back to the NALCS. We're on to our next match, Team Coast versus Dignitas. And Coast won their way back into the LCS through the expansion tournament after a split in the Challenger Series. But this is a very different team than the squad that last played on the big stage.
Yeah, it really is, Rib. This is a group of veteran LCS players, really, who are making their return, obviously with a new team now, Team Coast. Also, they have 2 transplants from the European LCS.
Yeah.
Jess's joins from SK Gaming, and Impaler was most recently with the Super Hawk crew. There have also been some impediments that have kept this team from practicing together, visa issues here and there, not only with the European players, but with their Canadian player as well. So we'll see how they perform here, because I think their own expectations are a little muted.
Well, to contrast that, Dignitas are just returning from Korea, where they were getting an immersive boot camp.
Yeah, returning to Dignitas' team is the shot caller and part-time Prophet Crumbs, as well as Shifter in mid lane and QWicked on support. But just like the majority of LCS teams, though, Dignitas will still be adjusting to this new lineup. It's Gamsu, a Korean player in the top lane, and Core JJ, another Korean player who will be taking over for I'm a Cutie Pie when he stepped down from competitive play. So we did get a taste of this team when they played at IEM Cologne. They didn't do that great. They were defeated by Gambit Gaming to knock them out of that tournament. But today will be our first chance to see how they perform after their time in Korea and in the LCS.
That boot camp, though.
That boot camp, though.
That is it. Let's check out the teams with a roster rundown. On the blue side, it will be Coast. That means it's Chris in the top lane, Impaler in the jungle, Jezz in mid, Mash at 80 carry, and Sheep at support.
Yeah, you can see Team Coast, they're all lined up. They're still getting a little bit set up. Day one, these guys trying out their equipment they had to submit is a little bit slower. Dignitas as well here on the red side. Top lane is Gamsu. We got Crumbs in the jungle, Shifter in mid lane, and Core JJ and Kiwi Kid in that bottom lane. Core Kid, JJ Kiwi.
Wow, that'll happen.
Core Kid.
Core Kid.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see this. There's obviously, like we said, returning names and then new ones for Dignitas. I really like the way that, jumping to EU here for a quick second, the way Yellowstar described the team of Fnatic, having new players, a new outlook and whatnot. And while they still have Kiwi, Crumbs, and Shifter, I feel like they're getting that out of 2 lanes that were pretty outspoken, right? Cutie Pie was a pretty big player for the team, and a lot of people, especially Scar, would say that he was quite knowledgeable and offered a lot to the team, so that's big shoes to fill there. And then your top lane as well. Zion, he controlled his own game. He played his own, so it's going to be different for these guys to fill it. Be interesting to see if they change their style of play and if we can still get the direction out of Crumbs that they want.
Can also see the coaches standing up on the stage. Coast coach is Michael Slan. He is the son of actually Coast owner David Slan, I believe, and you can definitely see him pacing around behind, see what he's got planned for pick and ban. Obviously, the Dignitas coach, since they did lose Skara, is Devin Nash, or Malixia, as other people may know him. He was actually Dignitas' life coach back in 2014, and looks like he's taking over the pick ban notebook duties at the moment.
That's something that, you know, Kobe said was also one of the bridges that a coach has to cross is being, you know, have that relationship with the players, and being the life coach is something you quite intertwined with the life of the players you are around. So I'm sure he's already got that foot in the door. So now it's all about the strategy. It's about trust in that sense on the game side. I believe
those
they have
hand warmer packs open too. But there's a few issues going on there. There's a tear here.
It's tough.
That you generally go
They
for.
are very tough. So will Shifter be able to take it to Jezz in the mid lane? Jezz played quite well coming out of the expansion tournament, helping these guys get through and back into the LCS, a place that they have known before and probably want to stay.
Mid lane is interesting because here's the rub. Jezz, typically, if he plays Ziggs, they do well.
Oh,
pretty much whenever
this story.
They're not doing well, he plays Ziggs. That's what ended up happening at Worlds. SK was losing all their games. Then he played Ziggs, and they beat TSM and prevented them from finishing first place in the group stage, as NA fans are probably very familiar with. Also, he plays Ahri. But outside of those two, the majority of his success hasn't really been there. A lot of people in Europe thought you could attack him if you took away those two picks. However, people very rarely took away those picks from him.
Yeah.
And you look at the other side, obviously we have Shifter, who, while he puts together incredibly potent KDA statistics, we even had a graphic during the break where he has
Shifter
like 7 or 8 AD carry during the entire split on what was a losing team. But in order to get those high KDAs is almost an overly passive, low presence style of laning.
Right.
Because he averages at 10 minutes around 8 CS fewer than his opponent.
Right.
And that does not provide that much for the rest of his team, because that means the enemy mid laner is generally pushed up to his turret. It means if his jungler Crumbs gets into some trouble, he is slower to respond. He's very good at staying around the outside of team fights and finishing kills.
Right.
But as far as actual presence goes, which I'll get into a little bit in between games, but basically presence is, in my opinion, your ability to impact your opponent's mind in the game. Are they accounting for where you are? And if all Shifter is doing is sitting at the back of fights, letting things happen, and sitting at his turret CSing, his presence is approaching 0. And as he kills you, you'll start realizing it, which can have its positives, but is generally not that ideal of a play because it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of your team.
It'll be interesting. These guys share somewhat of, not the same champion pool, but like champions in a way. Definitely those wave clear-esque champions as well. We are going to go over to the analyst desk for a quick second as they discuss a little bit more of Coast versus Dignitas.
All right, so we have a second here to talk about Dignitas and Coast in this matchup that's coming up. Coast, one of our challenger teams that's coming in, re-qualified for the LCS through the expansion tournament. They've brought in a couple of LCS transplants from EU. And so, having watched EU play and seeing kind of, the style of EU, do we think that bringing that into NALCS, kind of they went crazy this weekend, the last couple days in EU. Do you think, Impaler and Jezz are going to kind of invigorate Coast to do that kind of thing and catch someone off guard this week?
I want to see his Rengar still be viable. I really want to see Impaler just whip that out and other jungle picks that he has up his sleeve. I think he's incredibly intelligent as a player. I do know that Coast has not been practicing as much as they would like to, especially since they've been kind of spread out all over the place, because they do have 2 Europeans who haven't been in the country until like a week ago.
Yeah, we have heard that from a lot of teams.
Yes, yes we have.
Somebody's don't even have their whole roster here yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a big factor. And Dignitas was lucky enough to at least stay together as a team over in Korea. Yeah. So perhaps a little bit of an advantage there, having been together and working together.
Yeah, and I got to see, does Dignitas have the CLG style of practice or the Cloud9 style of practice over in Korea, where, Cloud9 had a really good showing at Worlds. CLG, unfortunately, had a really lackluster one in the NA playoffs. But I do want to believe in the power of being together and boot camping really hard. Dignitas did not look very good in the offseason. We saw them at one of the IEMs, and it was a pretty short exit for these guys. But, again, I do have high hopes. I think they will turn out a lot better than we saw them last, just like TSM did.
Yeah, we haven't seen the new guys either, Gamsu and Core JJ.
Yeah, we saw them at the tournament. I think that at IEM, it was definitely a lackluster performance for them, but the shining bright spot for this team, I have a lot of faith in Gamsu. I think Gamsu is going to put a lot of pressure on Chris. I think that he can actually swing this game for Dignitas, and I think that it's going to be a really big focus on those big top laners right now. Rumble, Gnar, and Lissandra for Dignitas. I think picks and bans, those are going to show up, and we'll have to see if Gamsu can grab one of them.
Yeah, I definitely want to look at the top lane as one of the, the more telling matchups in terms of the way this game is going to go, but also the jungle, because these are, we've seen Crumbs have his success in the LCS, but Impaler in the expansion tournament, I would accredit the majority of their success in the expansion tournament to his solo play.
I think it's fair. Yeah, and his Lee Sin is scary. Aiden, you were talking about the fact that his Rengar is really scary. We got to see Rain overplay that from Fnatic. He single-handedly won Fnatic the game against Elements by playing this champion. So certainly there's room for playmaking junglers still to be here, still to make a giant impact on the game. And Impaler is definitely coming in as one of the best junglers in NALCS right now.
Yeah, and when we saw Impaler over in the EU LCS, he had to play kind of more of a tanky role for his team, more of a supportive role, and he's actually really happy because he gets to kind of fill in this offensive carry jungler role because they have Jezzes, they have these people who are going to be consistent. So he doesn't have to be as consistent, he can go off.
The other thing, though, speaking of stuff that we saw in Europe and we've seen in Korea as well, support Annie is big again. That is just Kiwi Kid's type of champion.
That's true.
He loves roaming around. He loves being the initiator. So Kiwi Kid is always sort of a wild card for Dignitas. If he gets something like support Annie and he has a good game, he can single-handedly change the game and win team fights with that champion. So, maybe he's happy that support Annie is back in the meta and currently accepted.
I think that's a really good thing for him, too, because the AoE stun is just a big tell that you're starting the team fights. And now when you have Crumbs, who's the shot caller for people who speak different languages too, you kind of need all of those just go buttons that just, you're starting the fight. Big tell of initiation. I think that's going to be great for them.
And I agree on the initiation point. I think Jat was talking about this, and I think the bill fits for Jesses as well, where the two mid laners for both these teams, Shifter and Jesses, they both seem to play
sort of secondary engaged mid laners, champions that come in second, right? Ziggs ulti, Orianna ulti, things where it's like, okay, you go, I'll do my thing next, and then we'll just do a bunch of damage this way. And when you've got these Nars and Annies coming in, the hard engaged that have very easy follow-up, all the champion pools these guys play fit right into that sort of, they fit the bill for this, and that's actually a sort of unintended power boost for both these teams' mid laners.
Yeah, we don't really expect a first blood solo kill mid this game running around.
Right, so it's the battle of
farming.
consistency now in the mid lane.
Yeah.
And who do we give the edge in that battle?
It depends on what champion they're on, really, because both these guys play a really mean Ahri.
Right,
It's
so
true.
Ahri,
I don't know
we
what's
see
gonna come out.
Ahri, we're
But
looking
other than
outside
that,
the
they're just
contested
like
pick.
maybe a little bit of LeBlanc, but I do think the consistency is a little bit more in favor of Jessis, actually, in my
Interesting.
opinion. I feel like he's more consistent, and he also does more in terms of presence in the game.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I actually would have said Shifter. Maybe I'm just overhyping the fact that, like,
You
back when
would
he
have?
was on-
Are you changing now just
No,
because he said? Okay, then you are
I'm
saying
still
Shifter.
going to,
Okay,
but
there
even
we go.
before you talked, I was going to say Shifter. I was going to say Shifter. You interrupted me preemptively or something. No, I'm just
Really?
kidding. No, you're fine.
I
You didn't talk
interrupted
out
you
of
before
turn.
you even wanted to talk.
Yes, exactly. You knew, and you still interrupted me. How dare you? Our synergy is so strong, Aiden.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyways, yes, I really think that Shifter has the ability to do some playmaking. I really like his Ahri when he plays this champion. Once in a while, he turns it on and goes really berserk. And if we see that Shifter, then great. And just, I would say on the average, the expected value of Shifter is higher.
Yeah, I would look to see Shifter if he is on that Ahri. I mean, that's the champion you're
Ahri,
looking at. If he
LeBlanc.
does manage to be on the Ahri, or the LeBlanc too as
I
well.
like the Ziggs.
He can make some plays.
Okay.
Kobe looking for the bomb lobs. So we're going to look at some contested picks in the mid lane. Now, what about in the jungle in terms of picks? We have that Jarvan. I mean, Impaler loved the Jarvan, does play a mean Lee Sin. Those were his go-tos in the expansion tournament. However, Crumbs, a big fan of Lee Sin, more of the supporty type Lee Sin though. With that, So do we look at Lee Sin to be hotly contested, or do you just kind of trade the junglers?
I feel like most of the bans are going to be focused on those solo lanes rather than junglers right now, because there's a lot of junglers that are really strong right now, and Crumbs has always been this guy that will play anything in the jungle. So
He's happy to play Vi.
yeah, I mean, he's happy to play any of these
Yeah,
champions.
anything.
Currently, I just think Jarvan is probably the best, not only because just as a champion, his kit was really strong, but also he combos perfectly with the top laners that are currently the best top laners. So not only is he best on his own, but he also has that synergy.
Are they going to take your advice, Zyrene, or are they going to go for the Narvin?
Oh man, somebody has to go for the Narv.
At some point, we got to see the Narvin. I mean, that is.
I agree.
It's a huge wombo combo. So then let's talk about just now we're really speculating. If we do see that on one side, what's the counter to that, other than I guess Janna for the major disengage?
I do like Janna, and I think you want to run some kind of heavy split push. I actually liked what we saw from Darius where you ran Aurelia, champion that's generally going to be good at 1v1ing, especially a tanky top laner because of the true damage. And if he hadn't been 2 levels behind, we would have seen Darius put more pressure on the map. Good on him to do what he could despite being down. But this is the type of champion I expect to see, a very good single split pusher, plus the disengage. Like, honestly, TSM's comp is what I would do against the Narvin, basically, right? Push them all back. Nar is very susceptible to Janna, a good 1v1 champion who will eventually outscale the dueling power. What TSM did is exactly what I would do.
And the bot lane. We have a relative unknown ADC in Core JJ, paired with Kiwi Kid. So that's a new duo down there. They haven't had as much time as Mash and Sheep, who've been playing together for a year now.
Yep.
How do we see that matchup stacking up?
That's why I'm kind of worried for this bottom lane, and why I said that I think Kiwi Kid will go back to his roaming roots. If he gets one of these champions like Annie, I expect him to actually make a lot of moves elsewhere on the map.
Yeah, the big roaming support shows up mid randomly, but it's very passive mid laner here on Jessis and Shifter. So
Yeah,
are
they even in the position to capitalize on a roaming support?
I think so, yes, especially because you've got these very aggressive junglers who are, very adept gankers. Maybe you're going to see Crumbs Elise. You're going to see either one of those Lee Sin, either one of those Jarvan. Like, Annie shows up and flash incinerates you for the stun, and yeah, there's going to be a jungler there and you're going to die. These teams are very, very good, especially where Crumbs and Kiwi Kid have played together for more than a season, more than a year. Shifter's been on that roster for a while. These roaming plays are going to be well executed, well oiled, well practiced. The core talent on both these rosters, I think, are going to do a very good job of, again, making these plays and getting this all set up.
Yeah, you have to assume that it's a given to follow up on the flash targeted stun.
Yeah. Maybe I should charm this guy.
Annie is also very squishy, so if Kiwi Kid does get caught out, as he's been known to do, he will die very quickly.
Well, yeah, that's the danger.
He hasn't even picked the champion yet. We're like,
Kiwi Kid's done 8 times this game.
No, we did it. We figured it out. They're going to have Narv.
Can we just start cashing the game already? Like, it's already walked in.
Ari, Annie, and then they'll take, like, Graves or something in the bot lane. Perfect. That's
probably Graves,
Dignitas's
actually, yeah. That sounds like the exact right champion for them.
I mean, all right, so we've got Dignitas's game plan all figured out. Now, let's look at now, too, the fact that earlier we talked about having 2 established coaches. Now we've got 2 unestablished coaches, right? And we're looking at, Malixia is moving into that coach position from being a life coach. So he does have some familiarity with the team, but you have to wonder now what the effectiveness of their presence will be during this champion select.
And that's why I think the veterans are actually, the people that are actually on the team, the players, are going to take much more weight in champion select than on other teams that have stronger coaches. These coaches probably won't offer as much in the champion select, and it'll be more on these guys who are actually used to doing it. You know, Crumbs and Kiwi Kid, these guys in the LCS when they didn't have coaches up there, and I think that they'll be able to handle it.
I do want to point out also, just to keep in mind, the coaches are really only there during champ select. You don't need, like, the challenge level player, like, calling your rotations for you because they're not allowed to talk during the game. What I mean by this is that typically all your team comps and your champion pools are pre-rehearsed. Everyone knows what they are. They're down to the notebook or whatever. I think there's actually a tendency to overstate, like, the necessity of the coach being, like, a highly skilled individual player, right? Where, like, they got to know all the counter matchups. It's like, well, hey, Shifter, you know, here's your champion pool, like, what do you want to play into this one? And then keep in mind, hey, does this fit the comp, right? Like, I feel like a coach can very easily just be, like, the guy to be the gut check. To be like, hey, are you sure this is a smart choice? You've got a minute to lock this in. Is this the right way we want to go with this? Are we going to run this comp? Guys, remember, we want to run the hard engage comp against this team. Let's keep on track here, right? It's kind of the guy that's going to make sure no one's getting caught up in stuff. And I played with Malixia a little while ago, actually, before he was the coach of Dignitas. He's like a mid-plat player, really talkative, really smart guy, but not the highest skilled individually. I don't think you need that. I think he's been with the team for a long time. He's going to keep them in shape, and he's going to kind of push the champ select through, like, properly.
Keep them focused.
Right, yeah.
I know he's the life coach back in February. Is he the guy that told Cutie Pie to, like, see everything as a turret?
I think that was different.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm very curious to know, because I know he's a life coach for them, but can he help them integrate inside the game and, like, come together as a team there?
I mean, I like the idea that the coach is operating kind of as the blinder, right? Keeping them focused on what the task at hand, what the objective is.
They're not building team comps in midair or anything.
No, please. I hope not. And so, that's an interesting, way of looking at it then, because then you have to, keep in mind, when do you yield to the player's knowledge as the coach, and when do you yield to the coach as the player and saying, hey, this guy has an interesting third person's perspective and isn't necessarily reacting emotionally to, like, I just feel like if I played this champion I would win kind of a situation.
It should be a back and forth with the input as well, with the coach kind of having the respect of the player, and that's why I think, like, Loco Doco and Charlie are great examples of this, because they're both very skilled players, and you could probably just queue up in a game against them in your lane and get some lane training too.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we've talked about in the past, the possibility of evolving into position coaches and things like that, just because knowledge of matchups over a champion pool of 120 plus is absolutely insane.
Yeah. And also keep in mind sort of the communication you're talking about. When does the player's mind take over? One thing to keep in mind, kind of talking about random things to know about gaming, like when you come down to the last 5 to 10 seconds in the decision making, as a coach, you kind of need to shut up and, like, just let them make their choice. Like, if you're talking, whether, like, going through all this, you tend to put a lot of extra words out there and it gets jumbled. You kind of keep the input going, but at the end of the day, it's still the player's decision. If you think about Season 3 with TSM, they role-swapped Reginald and Dyrus to make sure they got the bans done properly. Like, sometimes the player just does what they want to do, and I find teams oftentimes just say, okay, I trust you. You want to play Jinx here.
Yeah, I'm more infinitely curious to hear the sounds of the game, what the coach is saying to them beforehand. It's like, pick Jinx. No, I don't want to play with pick Jinx.
Pick Jinx.
Pick Jinx.
No, just trust me, pick
What
Jinx.
happens there? Because everybody's taking a lot longer to lock in their champions overall, so they're actually spending that minute to just have a discussion with their coach. Some teams actually don't have that back and forth, though, that we've seen.
Yeah, the extra time that we've seen added on to Champion Select, just in terms of teams actually taking the full allotted time to make those champion picks, definitely points to that there is more discussion. Hopefully they are coming out of Champion Select more confident in the teams that they're picking. Since we do have the time right now, I want to talk about some of the changes that have just happened to the game specifically. So we can move away from Dignitas and Coast. Let's go to the jungle, since we got Kobe, Irene, junglers, and then Freak, numbers guy guy over here.
I'll just find this one.
I mean,
No, I'll just wait.
I want you here because the math is your thing, right?
Okay.
So we've looked at in the previous game we saw
How much
Rek'Sai.
how much damage does Baron's first spell attack do now, Freak?
It just does whatever his total AD is. Look at the number. It scales up every minute. You can't tell me that.
There you go. Okay. Now, so let's look at the jungle items because we noticed in the last game Rek'Sai picks up that Stalker's blade first as opposed to the Trailblazer. But now because you have that ability to transition between the enchantments for free, we've talked about how it can be incredibly effective to start with that Trailblazer just for the early clear. It really keeps you healthy and then even allows you to make ganks.
Well, it's completely reactive now. Since it's free, switching them out, it depends entirely on how the game is going. If you're planning on going for a level 3 gank and you want to have your Chilling Smite, then you get it right when you want to go back out there and you want to combo it because you're sure you're going to get a first blood or something. But if you are something like Rengar, who has a little bit tougher time in the early clears, and you just want to try and power farm, you want to try and get to level 6, you want to make that gank more effective, then you start out with Trailblazer, swap it out before you enchant it, by the way. You can't swap
You can't swap it out.
Somebody's going to be like, you told me I could swap those after you can't swap them after they're enchanted. So sometimes we'll even see people, get a Tiamat first before even enchanting their jungle item because they can want to keep switching it back and forth.
Yeah, and I think that someday somebody's going to get really crazy and be like, Poacher's Knife, first back, go get 100 extra gold from the jungle.
You mean someday when
Boom.
they change poachers? So it's good.
No, I'm saying, dude,
No, especially in lane swaps. Like we actually,
it's free to change out, so you get yourself like 100 extra gold if you go for that path. So I think it's actually something that people should experiment around with. Yeah. Just a little bit. I know, you're like,
I actually
I see
completely
it.
agree
I
with
think
you
it'd be
here.
funny.
Leave a Rek'Sai tunnel over in their jungle just so you can get back there and use it quickly.
No, I'm talking to be fair, I'm going to say it's in a very specific situation.
All right.
Yes.
But in all
That's
lane
why.
swaps, one team owns like upper and west side jungle,
That's
the other one
true.
owns, and half that's the quote unquote enemy jungle. If you just show up like first recall, get poaching smite, those camps are yours anyway, and they're just worth 20 more gold apiece.
and then you recall,
Why
you swap
not?
it out and get the one you were going to get. Do it, Kobe. Try it out.
and you even get your smite back up. There's actually no downside. It's the right choice. Not that you're ever going to be in a lane swap in solo queue, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, sometimes, though, it's based on a champion. Like, Rek'Sai should usually take Chilling Smite right off the bat because her level 3 is just so potent, and you can immediately go for those ganks. Also, Rek'Sai, when you have the Raptor buff on you, and it procs, and you see a ward, you have to unburrow to see the ward.
Unless you have someone on your team or vision.
But if you're
That
the
was
only one
killer.
there, you have to unburrow. You can't see anything when you're burrow.
Centaur.
It's
I know.
right there next to you. You can smell the ward.
LCS debut, and now that's going to haunt him for life, Zyrene. Thanks,
Is this the new walking past pink wards, by the way? You guys remember the last?
I don't
last
blame
season
him.
start?
It's always banned. So, like, not having that much experience with it is very common. People pick it up because they perceive it as being very powerful, but their practice on it may not be as many hours as they would like.
All right, well, we've clearly had a few technical delays, and we passed the time. Yeah, well, we passed the time quite obviously by analyzing gameplay and things like that. I don't know how you at home pass the time, but Austin and Allie do so by proposing for marriage. We've got some footage that we're going to roll for you guys right here. Pretty special event taking place right here on the League of Legends stage.
She's nodding yes, that's a good thing. All right.
It's a beautiful thing, right? And I love that this can happen in a place like you see this kind of stuff in MLB stadiums, NFL stadiums, and now you're seeing them take place on League of Legends.
Yeah, I saw it actually at Worlds too. This is not our first. We've had a couple.
This is not our
We've
first.
actually had a couple proposals before.
We have a little audio perhaps here. No, some just emotion, just overrun by emotion.
Scream's enough for me. That's weird out of context.
The scream is enough for me. All right, freak. Yeah. Well, I mean that's a great thing. Let's go back to gameplay.
Great transition right there.
Well, I had to add my 2 cents.
I know, and then freak just kind of took the wind out of the sails there. Back to jungles though, because that's what we were on. We look at all these. We look at the jungle picks, right? Jarvan, these kind of early pressure junglers versus the farm junglers, and it seems like those that have those early kits that still allow them to sustain are really popular. Are we going to see that move away from though, with the ability to now have Trailblazer early and switch to Chilling Smite that provides sustain to junglers that may not have had it before?
You're saying switch away from
Yeah, like play the non-sustain junglers.
Right now you're looking for junglers
Use
that
Trailblazer.
have built-in sustain or something like that. Like Elise is decently effective because she can get some of her health back versus, Lee Sin who can do the same thing. You look at other champions that don't have that ability. Now that they can build Trailblazer and then swap it later,
I think the champions that benefited most from the new smites on this latest patch were probably Hecarim and Rengar, probably. Because I like going Trailblazer early on Rengar, and Hecarim, he always had to have it before. Not only did he get buffs to buff his sustain, but also now being able to start with Rangers and swap it over to Chilling Smite, because you definitely want Chilling Smite on Hecarim, because it gives you more damage. But him being able to start with that early and then switch over makes that his mid game really powerful. And same thing for Rengar. I usually get the Trailblazers on first back and then swap it out pretty quickly as soon as I'm going to start doing ganks, definitely before level 6, because it adds a lot of damage and slow.
Yeah, and I think Sejuani's kind of in the same boat. You can't actually just stick with the Trailblazers the entire game, but Chilling Smite's just so powerful.
Yeah, and I do think, though, it's not specifically to the rationale behind your question, but as far as the very champions coming out, carry junglers like Olaf, I actually want to start seeing more. Because the jungle camps are worth increasingly more money, now Scuttlecrab actually ups in gold. We saw Meteos getting 80 gold per clear for an 800 health
Calm down.
Sorry, I'm really excited about money. It's like a deal. Look, Kobe, I started saying numbers. What do you expect from me? I said 80 twice. Like, it was great. Okay. But carry junglers like Olaf, we've seen it played in pro play a little bit already, actually. Again, you can get the Trailblazer early on, switch to Chilling Smite. Again, specifically Olaf, because he gets a haste buff out of smiting people. Like, this is exactly what the champion wants. I think some teams will start embracing carry junglers this season. We'll see a few.
St. Vicious has been playing a lot of Olaf, in the off seasons, and he does have a game coming up today, so maybe we'll even see it today.
Now, I want to go to the bot lane and talk about champion picks down there, because we mentioned Annie. We mentioned, just in general, we mentioned that Annie is coming back now, definitely has the ability to roam as well. And does that then hint towards things like Leona coming back? Because we used to see, it was very popular, the Annie versus Leona in the bot lane. But we're still seeing a lot of the Janna Thresh, and we haven't really seen anyone skew towards Leona yet.
Part of what I like about Annie's support is that she's really good against a lot of these popular champions, Janna specifically. Leona was the old school hard engaged champion, but she was incredibly easily stuffed by like a Janna Q. The Zenith Blade goes away. Maybe you have to flash from her ulti, but no big deal. Annie bursts out Janna before she can typically react, or at least bursts out whatever the carry is. And again, she's ranged. A lot of her follow-up might be ranged. So even the Janna ulti might not even do anything if she does have the initial burst. So sometimes it's a counter matchup. And then when this champion becomes more popular, now you get to build comps around it. You're going to run hard engaged sort of comps more often because you're going to play around Annie's more often. And yeah, it does change the game quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the other thing funneling into that, Annie also benefited from the stat squish at the beginning of the season. We talked about this for mid laners, and we're like, oh, these assassins are going to come back. Everybody's going to be able to kill people at level 6 because they have, they have less defenses. Support, same thing. If you have hard engage, the value of hard engage just went up, and especially bursty hard engage like Annie has.
Yeah, for levels 6 to 9, you actually have less HP, armor, and MR than you did previously. So level 6 power spike of Annie is just way more. Like, basically, you have to do 80 less damage than you did before, or 80 to 60, something along those lines.
And so then, obviously, we see that has to then combo with high burst damage AD carries. So we've seen Graves come back into popularity and things like that. Do we expect, though, to see... we saw the Jinx come out, right? And as you mentioned, Jinx is very susceptible to that hard engaged Jarvan, Narvi, things like that. So is that always going to have to be paired with something like Janna then?
I think you have to be either really, really good at the game. You have basically... So Jinx, to me, is one of the best AD carries if you can pull it off. Right? She has reset, she has burst, she has things that you can do from outside of range. And this is why you don't always need Janna. We actually saw, for example, the very last team fight, the replay we played at the end of TSM vs. Cloud9. Wild Turtle was attacking from over a wall, threw a rocket in, threw a zap in, okay, they're out of range, flashed over the wall to keep fighting. He preemptively was out of range of everything, and a really good player can do that. They can use the map to their advantage, understand when the fight's going to happen, and they can make this all happen. So you can play around not having a Janna, but it's much trickier to do so, and we'll see that champion fail occasionally when you don't have good peel on your team.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like babysitting. You can put Morgana, Black Shield on her for some peel. You can give her a Thresh Lantern. There's a lot of supports that synergize really well with her. And the fact that she just takes turrets so quickly, she's so punishing for a misposition, you'll lose 2 turrets in an instant.
All right, I just, again, want to reiterate, we apologize for the technical difficulties that are taking place between the two teams. But, of course, that does give us a moment to, again, talk about the changes that have happened here. And I want to touch on the fact that we've kind of established the fact that the champion pool seemed to have grown, actually.
I think so.
From last season, it seemed like, every role kind of fell into its 3 or 4 meta picks. How much of that is a product of the fact that this is a new season and there's just a lot of exploring going on, and how much of it is a product of the fact that, no, this season just actually allows for more things to be played?
Yeah, I think that always happens during the preseason, at the very beginning. Of course, people are going to try and explore. But also, props to the Balance team. I think they got a lot closer this season than they have in previous preseasons. And people are actually having a hard time deciding what is the strongest at any individual role. I mean, they're kind of whittling it down now. And, people are still trying to keep their personal tier list secret so that other people don't, ban them out and,
they don't pull it
try and
amazing.
take advantage of them. But I do think that there are definitely more options available this season.
Yeah, it's all fresh and it's all new. Strategic diversity.
Oh, wow. You had to.
I had to just throw the words out there.
I just love buzzwords.
Oh, yeah, buzzwords. Strategic diversity. But
Yeah.
I think that they're actually hitting that right on the head here, and that people are realizing top lane mages. It's not all top lane tanks. Lane bullies are a thing. There's a lot of more, because in previous seasons, we saw supports kind of have there's sustain, there's engage, and there's poke supports. And then it ended up being actually, now there's a little bit of that for every lane. Top lane kind of left out of that. It was we're all tanks or we're all lane bullies. It's all wet noodle or something else. Now you see a whole bunch of more dynamics coming out. And same with junglers, too. And I really love that.
Also, as we're constantly adding new champions, of course, there are more options, so that means there are more combinations. That means there are more counters to anything that someone comes up with, so it's much easier. If you have more pieces to play with, it's much easier to have a more interesting game.
You have to imagine, then, that teams are coming in with far more game plans in terms of champion select, things like that. And I guess that would be one of the added benefits to having the coach around, is that they can reorient the team to, hey, look, if this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do this. Whereas, last season, it's we'll see how the first picks go, and those will be very telling of how the rest of the pick ban phase is going to play out.
Right, and I want to actually bounce off what you said, Zyrene, about how there's these, different types of champions per role. Again, the AD carry main is going to keep bringing this role up, but the fact that Sivir's popular again, and I kept throughout the entirety of last year saying, guys, I want to see Ashe and Varus play it again. No one ever wanted to play it, but Sivir is, in a way, the new Ashe, right? It's the new hard engage AD carry where, look, she's not the best damage dealer. She's certainly not a Tristana. She's not a Jinx. She's not mobile in, the conventional Lucian kind of way. But she brings the engage power. Now, with that comes weakness if she doesn't have the same kind of damage. So when Cloud9 was the best team in NA in Season 3, they ran Rumble top every single time they could, or Ryze, something like this, these high damage laners when they ran Ashe. Or they would run Zyra support, a high damage support. We're seeing these Sivir comps come in, but you need to, again, bring damage in the other roles. This is why I talked about the Olaf. It's why I want to see Rumble, and it got banned for what that's worth. These damage supports, you have to texture your team compositions properly based on what you're lacking when you pick a certain type within a role.
Yeah, and in AD carry for a long time, it was hyper carry.
Yeah.
Lane bully.
It was Lucian or Tristana.
Exactly. And it was just that back and forth forever. And people were like, well, the games are lasting a long time. Why not play hyper carries? A lot of hyper carries actually ended up taking some nerfs to them.
Right.
So these other champions that haven't gotten nerfs in a while are actually a little more popular and a little more potent.
Yeah, looking at, more mobile or supporty type, as you mentioned, the Ashe. I would love to see Ashe come back into play. And of course, then she would have to be paired, though, with somebody like Zyra, somebody high damage or who can keep her safe, because she, again, would be susceptible to the Jarvan, Vise, Lee Sin, Snars, things like that.
I mean, Cloud9 did last?
When they ran Zyra?
Yeah, Zyra, exactly.
Where'd you get that?
I just mean that if we're continuing this discussion about the fact that the champion pool seems to be so much bigger, and we're talking about relationships between champions, we can actually find places for champions like Ashe to make it back into the meta if we find the right partnerships to deal with what is also strong in other lanes.
Right. Think about throughout. Sorry, do you want to go, Kobe? Would you rather? Yeah. So think about during last season when Yasuo comps were a big deal, right? And it was oh my God, they got 2 knockouts and Yasuo's available. Oh my God, are they going to take the Yasuo away? The Lulu top got locked in. When's the Yasuo coming in? And you're like, we're going to see the same kind of thing with Sivir comps and this kind of stuff. And then when someone takes Sivir away round 2, you're like, oh crap, that was our AD carry. Maybe then we see what people believe to be the tier 2 champions in this role, the Ashe, the Varus, and whatnot. But I think, yes, we will, because there's so much type diversity in each role, you'll start building comps around, okay, damage top laner, engaged jungler, whatever. And then when you lose some of these, you have to find a substitute.
All right, well, we are aware of the fact that was a lengthy break, but thank you for sticking with us. The teams are headed into Champ Select, so we're going to throw it over to Riven Jat for the call.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We are all much wiser. true to your words. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to play some League of Legends.
Well,
that's
we're not
really
going to play technically.
what happened. Well, the show is playing League of Legends.
Yeah, we're going to watch some League. There it is. All right, we have Coast versus Dig. We have right next to us Chris and Kiwi Kid. They're not really looking at each other, but it looks like it. We're about to head into Champion Select. We heard a lot of the matchups between these lanes, the Shifter versus the Jezzes, sharing somewhat of a champion pool. Will Jezzes go back to his clear, a safe play for these guys? I want to see plays being made. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. I want to see this game. I think I can sympathize with everyone who stuck with this. Thank you so much for staying on the stream. Huge apologies for the technical difficulties. Blame Chris being left-handed if you're very cruel, but that is a small part of the issues we're having. And yeah, finally picks and bans. Dignitas, new team. Coast just into the LCS. How will they do?
Let's see what the coaches have to say as we come into picks and bans. It's going to be Purple People Eater going out first. Cassidy's going to be off on this one. Rek'Sai, she will not find any gameplay this
Another
time.
Purple People Eater?
Yeah, I think the quote from last
Rek'Sai
game.
is a girl.
Gotta clarify that.
If I say it wrong, I am wrong. Because Rek'Sai is a girl, and she is banned. So
Is banned. Yep.
Good.
Another girl getting banned, Sivir. Easy one to recognize. No spell shields this game. They don't want that power as well. We heard Freak talking about the engage or disengage. And Janna as well. So a lot of the bans we thought would come out in the first game are actually happening now in the second game here of Coast versus Dig.
yeah, and these are not looking like heavily targeted bans. So we may get a little bit more individual player expression coming out here. Also, by the way, we did mention the coach standing behind Coast is Michael Slan. He is the temporary coach. Elements, the player, not the team, formerly of... He actually had coached Coast in a previous season.
Yeah.
Used to play on COG and Curse Gaming dating all the way back. Will be their full-time coach when he is here.
That's happening a lot. Teams, names, teams. Things are getting confusing.
Yeah.
We got Nar picked up first. He's been banned a lot in other regions. He's going to find his way into the second game here at the NALCS, and a champion that a lot of people thought Meteos should have grabbed last game. Jarvan could be locked in here for Dignitas as they wait for the first pick rotation of their 1-2.
I mean, I was very surprised when Elise was picked over Jarvan last game. I think that was something the guys on the desk picked on as well, is if you can combo Jarvan with Gnar, it is usually a deadly combination. Add that to the fact that Impaler is a great Jarvan player. It's a smart thing to pick for Dignitas to use, as well as to deny Coast the synergy and comfort.
As Lee Sin still, we heard a little bit about that on the desk, as Jarvan and Corki are locked in there for Crumbs and Core JJ. Now over to the side of Coast. Crumbs took, or rather Dig took quite a bit of time there with their picks. Figure Coast will do the same, kind of stretch it out, and then you only give that amount of time for Dignitas to pick their champion. So you're kind of tightening it up on them if you wait.
Yeah, they mentioned this over during the EU LCS as well. A lot of teams are actually taking longer to lock in their picks with the addition of coaches because there's just more discussion flowing back and forth. And I imagine there's also more confirmation of what they actually should pick. Coast did it a little bit out of order there, which is suboptimal. You want to actually lock in both at exactly the same time to minimize the amount of time the other team has to discuss what you are picking and what to play against you. But just a small mistake.
Mashme chooses Caitlyn. Gonna have safety and range in the bottom lane. We did see a few blitz cranks from Nif over on Elements from the EU LCS. Shifter's Ahri has been taken away. We heard about the analyst desk being pretty adamant about that, being a champion he can control the lane with, but so can Jezzes now. And we'll have to see what they decide to go. Another thing that brought up a point to talk about was that Annie being played in the bottom lane. We saw Yellowstar doing big things, and Kiwi Kid, that just fits right into his pocket once again.
I would really love to see a mid or a top lane Annie.
Top lane Annie was like hovering, and then I never saw it, but people were like, man, top lane Annie.
You see a decent amount of it in solo queue. It's most likely support here
Okay.
for Kiwi Kid. But you never know.
But when you're in gold solo queue, you don't see crazy stuff like that, Chad.
You see more of it. No.
Yeah, right?
All right.
Get them Vagar supports, the double smite Brahms.
Coast still needs to do support and jungle. I wouldn't be too surprised if Impaler pulled out the Lee Sin, or as everyone wants to see, his Rengar. But his Lee Sin during the expansion tournament was really good.
Lee Sin Thresh?
Really felt like he carried a lot of games. That would be the pack of utility that they need, really.
That could be good. You have a lot of escape for somebody to go.
Rengo.
Whoa, neither of the
All
options
right.
I just put out there. Rengar and Leona. Freak said it a little bit. I believe that, you know, it was his Rengar. Impaler's pretty good on it, but we haven't seen NA Rengars have too good of a time over here at NA.
Good thing he's a European Rengar.
So good.
Problem solved.
There's usually a way around it.
I like the Leona pick as well, just against Annie. Level 6, all-inning
Cheap
in
but
reverse,
great
basically.
Leona.
Yeah. The extra armor and magic resist that Leona has versus the lockdown when Annie does wander in to try and stun you is awesome.
At least one person's going to survive a level 6 explosion, right?
Would
Could have the
Shifter pull out
Azir.
Ari? Or sorry, Azir. They're an A champion.
The A champions indeed, all over the map. Annie, Azir, Ori. Can it be locked down? He's
Do
going to wait
it.
it out, but it looks like he will lock this one in. The team will have some good control over the team fights, especially disengage once they need to use that Conqueror's Divide. So they do lock it in. Pretty cool compositions coming out of both teams here. See, the Coast kind of puts together that composition. Hopefully Impaler can get going so they can utilize all the power they have.
And I think it'll be very critical that Mash and Sheep do well for Coast in this lineup. Caitlyn, you need to pick it for the strong laning phase, but if it does get there, that type of safety is very required because with an Annie stun, Aurelia, Jarvan, the pile-on potential that Dignitas has is really high. And additionally, if Coast does want to dive in, it's pretty hard to dive in on the Azir in the right ways if Shifter starts getting ahead. So a lot of this will fall on the shoulders of Mash's Caitlyn.
Yeah, another good pickup with that Jarvan as well to stop them from synergizing the Narvin, as Zyrian said, so you can't get any free walls out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm glad they picked the Jarvan away. Crumbs is Jarvan. He has had some pretty poor showings as of late. The end of last year was weak. He started the season looking like the best jungler in North America back in the 2014 summer split. Their time at IM Cologne, he looked kind of like he did late summer, which is not that good.
Right.
So now's the time, better time than any to bounce back.
Well, now that we've had a look at the team comps, head over to Twitter and lock in your predictions from this match. Tweet hashtag CST win or hashtag DIG win to @LOL Esports. We'll be tallying your votes later as well. Something we've noticed from Dignitas from season to season is they're kind of like beginning of the season, mid-season. And then they just kind of fall downhill.
They do great at the start of seasons when expectations are lowest. And honestly, with their way they performed at IM Cologne, the Dignitas fans are cautiously, very cautiously optimistic right now.
Being a Dignitas fan, indeed. We'll see what they can do to start off the beginning of the game. Heard on the analyst desk mentioned Fnatic's Reignover played some Rengar, and he actually was doing some pre-6 work. Not something you see a lot of the time. We'll see if Impaler can get some of that aggression down. As we know, a Jarvan can easily go from lane to lane, just popping people's flashes. Lawn darts.
Found him. Well, I guess Dignitas wins then. They did the first bit of damage.
Ooh.
Swag dance. In
bit
the
of a
vision
taunt.
of Crumbs.
Line of scrimmage on this one. We still have a little bit of time for teams to move around here. They can still get together, but it looks like a lot of safety from both Dig and Coast as we start this game off. Everybody making use of their emotes as they christen the stage here with their first play.
Well, it is just very defensive openings. Both junglers having vision of each other, mutually assured knowledge of each other, basically, for where they're going to start. If Crumbs is over on that side of the map, he's going to have to make a pretty quick run if he wanted to go over to Gromp. So it does look like Kiwi Kid and Core JJ will be starting Gromp. I want to track how this happens in the bot lane, because when the season patch first released and small jungle camp spawns got moved back to 155, everyone was doing it. All the pro teams were saying you have to do Gromp or Krugs because otherwise you're just losing the lane straight up. Then a few tweaks were made. It became a little bit more difficult to do this. As you can see, Kiwi Kid's actually going to take a lot of damage here, so he's got to burn a couple biscuits in order to get up to full health. And it's taking them a little bit of time. I think they may end up missing a minion or two. And we'll end up seeing...
Oh, yeah.
See, that's
2
one
minions
minion
already
down. Whereas Mash is going to have the lane shoving already. I want to see if this gives them an edge or if it's actually a bad idea. I mean, they're against a Caitlyn. they're kind of zoned away already.
That definitely wouldn't have given him any advantage in the lane there. And coming to the lane so late, Mash and Sheep know that a level 2 strong hit could be coming in. So it's a little told, but that's up to Dignitas to get themselves in the right
They're so
spot.
slow to push that
Yeah.
they're not even hitting level 2 first.
You can't.
Once they get the entire wave, they could maybe hit level 6 earlier, but I would imagine from Dignitas' point of view, since they were against Caitlyn level 1, they just didn't want to be a part of that lane. So it wasn't so much about trying to get an edge, but trying to get unharassable farm.
Normal HP in the jungle there for Impaler. Going a little low, gonna head back and get his item. Back to crushing that down. Great gap close there by Gamsu, but I don't know if he's gonna get out without taking the bit there. That wasn't what he wanted. He thought Chris might have backed off a little bit more from the aggression, but Chris turns immediately, getting ready to gnaw her out, and he'll use that safety to ward.
Well, Chris started lane with the Crystalline Flask, so he was actually trying to take a slightly unfavorable trade just so he could out-sustain Chris. It did go a little bit lopsided, though, and I think that was a really bad trade, all things considered.
He's being careful. He doesn't want that true damage. Staying safe, Impaler finally returning in. I don't think he'll be making too many moves just yet. Every lane is just in the middle. Playing it very safe. We see now that Crumbs is also going to be entering his jungle. In this mid lane, 16 to 15. Looks like Shifter's been using those soldiers, though, to get some good damage down from afar.
I do want to mention, since this game is still pretty subdued, the difference in the early junglers' plans here. So Impaler backed after 3 camps, which he had to do because he was very low on health, and that only gives you enough gold to upgrade your jungle item and pick up an extra health potion or 2. Whereas Crumbs actually did a 4th camp when he went back to base, allowing him to pick up wards, but making it a little bit slower for him to make it into a lane. So let's see if Crumbs can actually get some extra vision control with that extra camp he was able to put, or if Impaler actually gets a jump on him by ganking while Crumbs is warding.
This is going to be good. He sees that the red is down, but he does not know the location that Impaler went after that. He does leave the ward so he can start to deny a bit of these resources. But they may get some love here from Rengar in the bottom lane. Full ferocity stacks for him, so this could definitely be a big play. And that would hurt what Core JJ and Kiwi Kid were trying to do and get an early wave blast into the brush so they couldn't see him, but I don't think anybody was ready for that. Able to turn damage on 2. JJ returns the same amount of damage he took to himself.
Kind of trying to simulate a level 6 Rengar there by getting the point-blank bola from a leap. Really flashy-looking play with less than flashy results. He did burn 2 flashes from the opponents, but he lost a lot of ground to Crumbs there.
The payoff there could have been gigantic.
No flash on Sheep, but he doesn't get knocked out.
Crumbs playing with the edge of the turret line right there. Keeps himself just out of range perfectly and applying some nice damage.
Don't do that again.
He's just harassed. He's playing around. He's fine. Giving a little bit of something extra for Mash and Sheep to think about as they try to farm. Gamsu trying to close the gap here. You got to watch out for that damage, though. And then he gets the speed. He could be able to close this one, but it's the teleports for both top laners, and there's going to be no kill potential after.
Nice bit of aggression. So he eventually won the sustained battle against Chris to push him out of lane, but he's not able to burn any summoner spells. Poor JJ gets a stun, but he's Valkyrie away.
Yep. Nicely done. Good trade, Kiwi Kid, to turn to mash correctly and try and get that damage down under the AD carry. Because that was the same thing Sheep was doing. Taylor, he's sad.
So who actually got the gold there? Because when you smite the buff the first time, you get the effect of the buff. So Impaler actually got the Razorbeak buff by smiting, but Crumbs' Razorbeak buff procced from the other Razors that he countered. If anyone can follow that, I was pretty confused. Jess is coming to level 6.
Sheep very low. The teleport from behind. This is going to be big. Gamsu in onto Sheep. The stun is out. Genesis is there too at just the right time. Chris comes in, far from being Mega Nard, but he will be able to put down some damage. The slow from Boomerang, he gets the catch. We'll be able to apply again shortly, but they disengage right away. The teleports one after the other. Everybody working spot on right now for both teams to stop that.
Jess is the first mid laner to try and roam in this matchup, meaning Shifter will push that lane relentlessly. Azir's not the type of laner who tries to wander around. He's out of tools here. He's got a flash.
That's a whoopsie.
What an aggressively silly and dumb counter jungle that was by Crumbs. Honestly, He knew Jez's was going to be returning to lane, and he
right.
burns his flag and drag to get into the Raptor camp, which, by the way, is the hardest hitting camp in the game.
Yeah.
So dangerous. Burns his flash, still level 4.
Trying to make some moves that put him in a dangerous spot. He blew flash, so you won't have that over Impaler, who blew his flash as well in the bottom lane. Both junglers trying to work with the devices that they get. Impaler now to the bottom lane again. Where is he at? Just about halfway, so he won't be hitting 6 on this one.
Why would you put 3 traps next to each other like that? You can cover more ground if you place them at the front of the brush and then at the back.
I've actually never tried that. Does that just catch you and catch you if 2 are close? Or is there like a I can't be trapped?
That's probably the answer. I hope that's the answer. Otherwise,
That would be
he's just
so
wasting
annoying.
mana.
Yeah, that's going to be tough if somebody runs into that.
I should know that, but I'll have to do some testing.
I haven't
later.
seen Caitlyn play in a while. At least not a lot of it. Gnar up on the turret. He doesn't have to worry. You just get so many resistances when you turn that Gnar form. He's not a care in the world as he approaches the turret. About Crumbs. He's taking his red. May actually put some pressure on that top lane, but pretty much perfect warding here coming out of Coast. There's one right under red and one in that tri-brush, so he can see anybody coming at the top lane.
And speaking of wards, I do have to commend the pink ward Crumbs placed early on in the game, where that ping actually just went down.
Yeah.
Down by Coast's
in.
red buff. That is the pink ward spot if you have an early pink ward and you're able to invade, because it is so seldom checked by the enemy jungler, and that is spectacular for scouting where Impaler is. We'll see if anyone ends up walking through that way. It just doesn't look like it's in the cards.
I actually saw it be pretty useful yesterday when a red buff was getting counter jungled. The guy knew 5 hits of the red buff would give him enough time to steal it anyways. He just walked out. So it's even better. It gives you a little more time if they do find it in the first place. Moving down, good clears.
Yeah, Crumbs is still not spotted. He had a lot of patience waiting in that brush. Did not want to all-in and reveal himself to Leona. But at the same time, it doesn't set up any type of kill for him. And like we saw, that pink ward showing exactly where Impaler is on that red buff.
See if he enters. He has no reason to. As you said, he'll just go down to Krugs. A little bit of pressure towards the bottom lane here from Crumbs. We also see Kiwi Kid come from the side. Maybe it's Core JJ trying to get a bait in here and say, I'm by myself. We're going to see Kiwi Kid enter the lane.
Yeah, that's where I think coaching needs to come in. Every time you do red buff and you go down to double golems, you should just take the extra 1 second, check that brush.
That's a good point.
Because it can save you so much for such a small investment. Now they know that Rengar is probably there. They're trying to bait a level 6 gank. They saw Rengar was low and Crumbs is down here waiting. But Impaler is actually so low that he decides to recall, and Crumbs ends up wasting a bit of time. Maybe they can get something if Sheep goes aggressive.
Yeah, I think Sheep knows, because Core
Oh my
JJ would
God.
be trying to shoot him.
He suspected it.
Yeah. There wasn't enough aggression just for him to be walking out there. So plays back and forth just with some ward games. Blade Surge onto Chris once again. He already used his Transcendent Blade, so he won't be able to get any more damage out of that. Chris isn't having a good time here. Usually you see Gnar able to stay safe, able to just use his Boomerang to farm, but Gamsu not letting that happen.
You can see Gamsu's actually putting more points into his W on Aurelia as well. Wicked really popularized the max E Aurelia against Ryze in that matchup, but against tankier targets, I think he wants the true damage and the higher sustain, which is working pretty well for him, even though the CS is pretty close in that match.
The one thing that counters a poop load of health, right? Able to cut through it. Oh dear, that's going to be the charm coming in. Conqueror's Divide isn't going to stop too much on that. Can he yo-yo one more orb of deception? It's the Foxfire to come out and get the kill for him.
Impaler gets it, they go for Mash.
Oh, we found Tibbers in the bottom lane. One rocket misses. That's going to be Sheep going in. You got to be careful, Sheep. Mash, not enough HP to join you on this one. Kiwi Kid forced out with an ace in the hole. And they stop what could have been a bad situation in the bottom lane, the side of Coast.
Dignitas is just not quite in sync. They spent so long down there with Crumbs in a battle in the top lane. Can he get him? Mega he's gonna Gnar! No way! That's why you don't fight Mega Gnar! So much power coming out of that ultimate. Or just the change, I should say. Gamsu thought he'd be able to burst him down before Mega Gnar, but he wasn't. Luckily, they both walk away with their lives. Gamsu down teleport. I want to talk about the problems Dig is having in the bottom lane, though. Crumbs waited so long in that bottom lane brush, and then as soon as he leaves, they do flash ultimate from Tibbers and nearly burst out Don't Mash Me. If they just would have gone for it, they would have had the kill, and it would be a 1-1 game right now. Teleport comes in, though, as they're trying to secure this dragon.
That
Gonna be a
flash
mini
Tinder's down as well. They're still going to get the dragon, but it may be a continued fight. Crumb's getting hit up. A few more hits to him. That's Chris's pickup. Jez's will be going down if Gamsu can get one more attack on Coast. Looks like they're trying to organize themselves here after losing 2.
They're
only
in
finding
a weird spot.
Jez's. Doesn't shifting sand. Shifter doesn't need to get himself into place just yet. They're still going. Chris puts himself in the middle of the fight with half Narbar, and it looks like they're actually going to be able to pick up Gamsu on this one. Soldier's coming up big for Shifter as he's trying to keep himself in range, and what an elongated fight there. They actually went back in with members down.
Yeah, Dignitas tried to contest during a 3v4 and got a little bit flanked. They did pick up a kill for Shifter. Azir does scale remarkably well with damage in the right time.
Again.
Yeah, we absolutely just have to
Dragon
see that.
bait, right?
Crumb's already low from the Dragon. That is the disadvantage of starting the Dragon. Since it's straight up a 5v5, they are kind of expected to lose that fight unless they're taking Dragon off the back of some real advantage. Not just, I don't think Coast is going to be there in time. And Coast was there in time, so they end up being able to win the ensuing fight. Hopping off the crab, Chris is, to get real close there. Shifter obviously can't zone quite well enough. And that is a lot of damage down onto Chris's Gnar.
Shifter and Jez's both having a pretty equal game for the AP carries. And both putting on a bit of pressure on either side as well as they get themselves built up here. You see the Morellonomicon finished up for Shifter. Help keep Impaler down as well once he gets that health low enough.
That was a very strange Rengar ultimate as they clear a pink ward in the river. But nonetheless, they get the pink ward.
It's a tricky crab.
They still haven't gotten that pink ward in their own jungle, though. One of these days.
It'll be there for a long time. It's one of those wards that have a timer on it. We'll just figure it out. It looks like they're safe enough as well here to come in and clear more out. That deep ward gives them so much to play with, so many options, and they are not even worried to do most of this. Checking that, says that Impaler has been here recently, and now they will see him towards the top lane. Actually, he gets out of the way of that minion, so no vision there for them. Crumb's still trying to deny. Impaler's not finding anything, though. He's walking around the map, finding nothing, just his camps.
Sheep and Mash just have this sense of where Crumbs is right now. Oh my god, if they get this.
No way! They just walk in like it's their jungle. They're going to pay for it. Usually you do, and you just nonchalantly step back. Crumbs trying to take it out. Kiwi Kid and them focusing on it. Probably should have moved a little bit faster knowing that Crumbs was so deep in the jungle. But
yeah.
It works. They get a kill on each side.
Really fascinating series of events right there because that was a educated guess by Coast. They knew that Crumbs had cleared a ward prior on top of the red buff. And then, hey, let's check. Just like, you know what? We're not in lane. I think they're respecting Tibbers a fair bit, and they had to back away. Speaking of that lane, we kind of lost track of it. Even though Crumbs didn't have very successful ganks, maybe the presence he offered down in that bottom lane, Cortege and Kiwi Kid are crushing Mash and Sheep.
That's true.
130 to 98.
No real help to the early Gromp, but they were able to pull out of that with an aggressive lane. Flash and Tibbers. Well, Tibbers isn't up, but Flash is, so we'll be waiting on that engage probably from Dignitas. Remember Kiwi Kid back in the day says, yeah, I have Flash, I'm going in. It's pretty much how he activates things.
Or, I don't have Flash, I'm going in.
No, I don't, but it's okay still. Dignitas' mentality on that, it's sometimes what makes the plays work. They just go headstrong into it, and if everybody follows, you get those results. Still safely pushing into the jungle here. This is just showing how much control Dignitas has. They finally, they back into it, only because they're trying to take red.
And it took the Raptor buff as well. It activated for Impaler to show him that the pink ward was there. So a little bit of poor luck that he didn't have the Raptor buff on at any other time when he was checking that. Finally, they get rid of this pink ward. Dignitas getting a lot of pressure back because of this, though. You can see the position of this game is slowly pushing closer and closer to Coast's base.
Looks like they're trying to stop that a little bit. 4 pink wards inside their inventory as they want to be able to set up defense they can control. They're losing pretty much all the wards they set outside that line, outside a river. You see Crumbs again grabbing up the crabs, and they're going to be all over the coverage. Oh. Okay, he's not going too far. But you can't defend it.
Cortege wanted it.
Okay, they're not going to go for it. So they know it's there. So it's going to be hard to defend. That's kind of stuff that Coast is just dealing with right now. Chris big in the top lane. Gamsu's there, though. Really good control by Dignitas to stop these waves as they reach the turret. They're in the right place at the right time.
I really want to see what happens with the next dragon in 52 seconds as well there. You can see both these top laners would teleport up. Chris still taking a lot of damage from Gamsu despite being so tanky. And then returns it in typical Gnar fashion. But yeah, I want to see if Dignitas tunnels hard on the second dragon, or if they can get the right type of position. You can see the pink wards around the dragon pit are slightly in Coast's favor. But if we get level 11 Mega Gnar with those items actually making it into the middle of that fight, I think it would be death for Dignitas. But at the same time, Azir with his immense zone control, if they can position in the right way, could just completely segment this fight and win it for Dignitas. Dig does have the early dragon. I'm just trying to figure out if it's worth them overcommitting for this dragon. They clearly want to start it. But if they end up losing another fight, it could put them in a very big hole.
We've heard some teams say that a few dragons in the early game isn't the end, and they've been able to give it up. Doesn't seem like Dig really wants to go for that.
I mean, we just saw it. TSM was down 3 dragons to 0 against Cloud9.
Yep.
And a Baron, and was still able to pull out a win. You can tell this one's getting a little bit testy, though.
Well, they have ward control, at least on this side of the jungle now. They figured out that they're not being spotted everywhere they go, and with Sheep on the front line here and Chris just about to gnaw out, this is perfect timing for them to get something. Unfortunately, he did hit that boomerang and take a shot, so he's going to gnaw out before necessary.
You want Mega Gnar to proc while they're fighting you, so you can catch them off guard. Now, they're almost forced into doing the dragon and Dignitas. Do they respect the Gnar, or do they pile in and fight?
I think you're going to have to. Looks like Gnar will still be up for the majority of that entire one, and the wait out. Patience is a virtue, and Coast comes out with Dragon on that one.
I think that was properly played by both teams. I really do think the Coast could have won that 5v5 if they pile into the Dragon Pit against Mega Gnar, because they didn't have position with Azir, but they couldn't actually get the position early on just because of the Rengar threat. So, Coast using their comp properly to get that Dragon.
You know, I said before that they didn't have Jarvan on their team. You can still gnar all people into that.
Yeah.
If it's up.
I know.
It doesn't matter if it's yours or not.
It's the anti-synergy. You all should try and peel Gnar, and then it's like, well, actually, Gnar just stunned my whole team. So
here's a wall.
Here's a tip. Do not alt Gnar.
Yeah.
Jarvan if he's on your team. Also, this is completely off topic, but if you have a Scion on your team and you're Jarvan, you can pop his ultimate on Scion on your own Jarvan ultimate to like completely troll your Scion as he's trying to initiate a fight, because he'll just hit your Jarvan Cataclysm.
I hope we see some Jarvans today, or rather Scions today. That is some fun stuff to watch. Barreling down the lane. And it's usually been some pretty good Scions that we've seen as well. But in this game, none to be had. It's Gnar versus Aurelia top, and Gamsu's been taking that to Chris pretty well this game. However, he has found 3-0 through some of these team fights and kept himself up in CS when getting battered down in that lane. So Chris is showing well here at the start of the split for Coast. Down to the bottom lane, looks like they might try to get a little bit of a gank here. Taken by surprise. Nope, they actually walk out in the lane. I figured they were hiding in the brush, but they're out in the open.
Really surprised still that Mesh lost that lane. Obviously there was a ton of jungle pressure by Chris. He's doing his best to try and keep up right here, but Caitlyn needs either a few kills or a huge amount of farm to really get going. I'd say Caitlyn definitely takes more items to turn into a giant threat than other AD carries do. Core JJ is basically there right now.
Yeah.
There's just Trinity Force and BF Sword.
They're still trying to make some plays off this bottom lane. Pink ward down in the brush, so you can see Impaler coming in and out. And actually, they're going to do it right now. I don't know if they're going to get what they want. We don't see Core JJ or Kiwi Kid pressing up past the river. They're keeping it as a rule of thumb right now. Still there. Let's see if the ward here coming in from Sheep actually gives them any vision over the wall so they can get this gank in. See, the mid lane is pretty open for Shifter here. Roam from Jez's is just towards the bottom side, maybe seeing if he can help in anything, engage in the bottom lane. Pretty much a stalemate. Both teams really respecting each other here as the game is really close.
Well, it's really difficult for Crumbs to make an aggressive move here. He doesn't have many items on Jarvan. He's 0-2. He's gone Sightstone, which makes his combat effectiveness very low. So unless he can get absolute knowledge of where Impaler's Rengar is, a gank can very easily be turned around on him, which makes him not actually want to do much. Yet he's still spending a lot of time just camping lanes, which is surprising to me that he's not farming more. It's going to set him back far, far behind. That's the Achilles heel of Crumbs. He's continually over-prioritizing vision and lacking farming, and when his ganks don't work, he falls really far behind of the curve.
No, it makes perfect sense. We see that ward's not there anymore. The deep ward, and their actions have slowed down across the board. Crumb's not making the opportunities that he was before when they did. And we'll see if they can find it another way. Looks like everybody's just grouping in mid right now. So vision for Coast tells them they also have some time to clear out some waves and get the wards down that they need. And still having a lot of those pink wards they did earlier, which means they've been protecting the ones that actually went down. Working out well for them so far as we reach 23 minutes in the game. 400 gold, about 500 gold is the difference. So it pretty much means nothing with a dragon on each side as well. Oh,
Blue minion
finally
MVP
getting
right
fancy.
now.
Yeah.
Who needs wards when you have minions? Yeah, it looks like Dignitas is trying to make an aggressive play, but they just abandoned that bottom lane. That's going to allow MASH to catch up, so Dignitas kind of has to make a power play right now, knowing that they've left Caitlyn by her lonesome.
They do have the options. Mid lane's getting pings here. That's by Coast. They're saying that is a dangerous spot. Do not go near Wolf opening. And everybody's going to be safe. Mashme has the wards to go just a little bit further, but he decides not to. He's going to head for the back. Everybody's taking this one real slow. 1 minute and 30 on Dragon. That's going to be something they want their ultimates for. So they're giving each other some space right now, that comfort level. And the wards actually really good here coming in for Dignitas. They've, again, started to get those forward wards down, where Coast only has that towards the top side for a bit of a lane pressure.
Yeah, I can see that invade and the logic behind Dignitas going into that blue buff area, because they needed a way of actually getting vision on Coast if they wanted to get aggressive. In order to get those wards, though, they did sacrifice their bottom turret, and they sacrificed a bit of the advantage that 4JJ had over MASH. It's really just going to be another objective game, it seems like at this point. The ward coverage isn't good enough by either team for them to really take control, and a lot of it's going to have to be down to the team fights.
All those team fights are going to have people grouped up. That's good for Shifter. That's good for a Kiwi kid. On the other end, you're going to have also that disengage, though. You can have Ari flying around. You can have Narth throwing everybody. So it's going to have to be, it's pretty much whoever ults first is really going to be the winners on this one. Usually it's kind of, you can predict the ult and then be the one to win the fight, but I don't know about that. Mashme taking quite a bit of damage there. Nar not too hyped up right now. He's going, changing on to Kiwi Kid. No! Timbers this fight. That goes down, and it looks like they're going to be going hard on this fight. Gamsu taking a lot of damage. Forced the flash over the wall, providing no more for the team. And Shifter is the only one who can fight from this range right now. Coast gets exactly what they want, taking out two. Maybe not wanting to lose Impaler, but the fact that he has to dive in so hard right now means he's probably going to go down. Great controller by Coast.
Actually a very explosive fight as well. If Kiwi Kid would not have been blown up so quickly, I think that could have actually been a fight for Dignitas. We really saw the potential of Shifter's counter engage right there. He was doing a ton of damage as Coast dove in for that one, so much so that even with the clean initiation from Coast, they had to just abandon the dragon. And now it's actually Dignitas trying to regain control over that pit.
He can't do much. He's like, oh, actually, I probably should have just back. He's going to at least try to get vision for the team. That'll be able to stick on this one. Oh, wait, we do have Impaler coming up.
Chris would have to TP in if they decide to go in on this. They almost have Ari ultimate.
Dragon, that's the TP. Nar's very close to going crazy on this one. Chris is going to be big. Impaler steals the Dragon. Can Dignitas come back on this one? Mega Nar is out, chucks the chimney down. Big damage from the Orbit Deception here, but they're deciding to back off without Sheep. A pretty good decision there. Kiwi Kid doesn't have Tibbers, but that was close to Dignitas falling.
Yeah, Dragon Steel, nice job by Impaler. All that investment Dignitas put in only nets them a kill onto Sheep. The real question is, can they get any vision control after making Coast fall away? And I think the answer to that is no. So, despite the kill, I think that's a big loss for Mid.
See it again.
Yeah, he just walked up and smited it. That's the old classic Dragon Steel there. Walk up and use your button.
Is that how it is?
Yeah, it's just smite. Make sure you have it on the right key.
Just
and
press F.
Press it. Sometimes when you have the chilling smite, you're too used to using it for the fights. Obviously with the Rangers Trailblazer.
That happens quite a bit. Or the fact that you just want to smite everything in the jungle for the buff, and then you're like, oh yeah, that dragon helps. Not something that Impaler is finding he's having trouble with right now. A great second Dragon Steal. 3 in the game, 2-1 so far, and that only means Coast is getting that much more powerful. Feeling the need to push up here. Looks like we're going to have Chris back to the top lane. He doesn't have teleport, though, so he's going to be up there for the long haul. This is a push that they're going to use. Put a little bit of pressure in the mid lane as well with the rest of the members.
And also, as far as being able to make things happen, Dignitas have been the ones that have been battling this vision control game with the double Sightstone for quite a while. And finally, Coast has a bit more to fight back with. They have the DFG now onto Jess's.
Yeah.
We talked in the pregame about both these mid laners being a passive style, and we saw it in their item choices. Jess's started with an Athene's Unholy Grail and then went to the DFG, whereas in the game prior, Bjergsen just went straight for the DFG and started making plays.
Yep.
Now, with the Deathfire Grasp, Jess's will have a bit more of an opportunity to make plays, especially if Rengar can get a catch. Will they go?
Oh, exclamation. Nice divide there coming out. They still take him down. There's way too much front end burst. Jez's will be picking that one up for himself. And the Sun Disc goes down for a little bit of control, but it's only a turret to be taken down here, most likely by Coast. They're not really that deterred by it.
Yeah, Crumbs continually...
Great picks.
He's now at threat for getting picked off, which really sucks. He has this Sightstone here, and he needs to be able to get map control with it. And normally it's great to have Sightstone on the jungler because it's harder to initiate on a tank than it is a support. But now that he is a very squishy tank, he's trying his best to take it up. He can't get it.
Ow.
I don't know about this two-man Baron.
Oh, there
Please
he
help
is. There's Chris. Good guy, Chris. You can still get killed by AoE, gentlemen. Be very careful here.
Oh, they can dodge around it. Dignitas kind of knows something's up. There's the ward. They know it's low. Do they try and flash in? They don't have flash.
Nope.
What a Baron sneak by Coast.
Could this be a fight that they take, though? Very, very low on this one. They find Jez's. This could be Baron going down. Actually, Gamsu's going to hit it. Transcendent Blades, and he will get a bit of damage. Nicely slowed by the Boomerang, and they are going for the fight. Soldiers over the wall. The big one coming out from Core JJ, and Shifter's doing what he can from just outside range. Kiwi Kid, a little too by himself there as he walks through the forest. He's going to go back with the team. And they come out nicely on that, picking up a few, but Coast will still have some minions to Baron up with those buffs as they lose turrets for their Baron attempt.
Yeah, but that is not a good Baron when you look at the results afterwards. There's a few minions in this mid lane for Dignitas trying to get this down. Coast will be coming out with 3 people, but that's not enough to fight 5.
No home guards on either of the people rezzing right now, so they're not going to be instantly into the fight. Still too much pressure for them to do anything. Impaler in as soon as he is up. He's going to try to dive out of this one. Gamsu with a blade surge and then a flash right over the elbow of the wall. Gets himself the safety to pick one more up before they exit. And it looks like Coast is left to kind of clean up the pieces here. Yeah, they got Baron, but Dignitas is showing that that was a mistake for them.
It's turned into a tremendously close game. And it's not going to be letting up anytime soon, especially with Coast's willingness to dive through the Azir.
Oh, yeah.
Mash is getting a little bit more and more gold, too. If he can get Last Whisper, he'll become a real big threat.
Do this again. Oh!
Yeah.
Little base gates coming into play.
Basic, also right there, he thought he was walling off the Rengar as he jumped in, but because of the base gate, he was able to get the flank with Rengar. Quick adaptation to how to use those guys on Rengar. Shifter guessed wrong with his Emperor's Divide.
Yep.
And it ended up costing somebody else's life.
Thanks, man. Oh, yes, Zanya's, though. Should be pretty good. And we'll see the mid getting cleared up here. It takes a little bit longer for these Baron minions to be cleared, but they got it.
Exactly. The nice thing about Baron buff is only one person has to have it in order to get the minions to the same power.
Nice.
So if Coast can actually get a fight of some kind and get a few kills, those Baron minions could push clean through Dignitas. But with the safe ward clearing of Shifter's Azir right there, it's going to be pretty hard.
I think it was in the LPL, they were doing Baron, like Banner of Command stuff. It was IG. That was really funny.
Meaning basically only the AD carry can kill it?
It was great.
Yeah, it could be a strategy here. If you get an empowered Baron minion, it attacks from outside the turret range. But if you Banner of Command it, it's immune to magic damage. So you literally have to stand there and whack it for it to die. And it forces the team into a really uncomfortable situation.
It did as well. They're pretty much just crushing down turrets. Not something we'll see here, however. As teams, as we look around those core items.
Yeah, no Banner of Command coming out.
Nope. We got Infinity Edge. Last Whisper.
Oh, no.
Phantom Dancer as well. That means big damage coming out from Caitlyn. We're going to have everybody ready for this fight. A few shots left and right. Not even going to need Mash's damage for that one. And Coast showing that they have control of the map. When you know that another guy can go hang out and push mid while you're getting Dragon, it feels pretty good for the team. And they're going to go ahead and take control.
Even though Dignitas wanted to control that Dragon to prevent the move speed buff from going onto Coast, they had no business walking in that space. They did not have vision control. They were not grouped up together. And they know that Charm plus Rengar equals death, and they did it anyway.
What?
Oh! Coast, Chris, couldn't get it.
Almost. That would have been pretty cool. I actually have not seen a Gnar smack a Jarvan out of his flag and drag. Probably be interesting. Back down to safety. Gonna go ahead and back right out in the open. They are good to go. Looking around again at those lanes. We talked a little bit about Shifter being behind in CS. He actually did well going into this game. Kept it even with Jez's. Both of them stayed safe, but you're Azir. You can farm from 90 million miles away, so that kind of goes into it as well. But he's the one that's trying to provide that damage and the separation of these fights. Like we said before, they're just getting charmed right through that divide. They gotta find a different way. Right now, that's to take control of all the resources and the vision in the map. They can get a good pick, and maybe a Caitlyn. Everybody else is really jumping away from the fight or peeling. They'll be good off.
It's still a really close game.
Yeah.
Even though Coast have been the ones picking most of the fights here, if Kiwi Kid can get a good Tibbers down onto Mash, who's yet to build a defensive item, it could be the end of the fight for him there. Or even if they can just lock down Jez's. One stun, burst down Ahri before he can start dashing away would be enough. But continually, Coast are the ones finding the fights, whether it be Jez's or Impaler that are starting with Rengar or Charm, and they're piling on spectacularly. Again, Dignitas is split up a little bit, but this time at least they're close enough to their turrets not to get caught by Impaler.
Look at the option they wanted to create there as well. They didn't see really anybody else on the map towards Wolves, maybe one ward over to the red side there, but they were ready to go in with 3 and take out Gamsu immediately. They want to make plays, and they want to make it happen now. Towards the top lane, oh, Gamsu, you are in a scary spot. Nobody actually goes around the backside of the turret. They just want that. They're going to play it safe.
It's a turret game. Now,
yeah.
Keep in mind, until next patch, the spectator turret counter will be inaccurate, so it shows 7 for Coast. That's counting 2 down to 0 turrets.
Right.
Yeah. It's actually 5 turrets that Coast has killed to the 5 of Dignitas. So the turrets are actually dead even right now.
Good old Shurima's legacy.
Yeah.
Also attack speed on cooldown. It's fun stuff. Shifter on Azir versus Jez's on your screen right here. Both level 16, providing the maximum amount of power from those ultimates now within these fights. And we see that Shifter's gone through the defensive power of the Zanyas, but it's all power coming in for Jez's as he tries to finish up the Void Staff next. 3 roam squad kind of going around here. It's Caitlyn, Impaler, and Sheep. So they're trying to get a kill on their own. Not finding too much. Dignitas is playing way too safe. They know it can happen.
They're out of vision too. So this is really a very bad spot for Dignitas to be in. The reason they're denied vision is because Crumbs was the guy who was supposed to be giving it to him, but he is too squishy in most cases to get caught out. Now he has some armor, but he would still have no resistance to Jess's flying in. They're hoping that Coast tries to overdive and Dignitas stays together, and that they can get a proper peel from Shifter's Azir and actually win that fight. It's just not happening right now as Baron's about to spawn.
Just the fear that the entire team, especially Impaler, is putting in here, like you said, without the vision. It can be a jump at any point in time, and the gap closing quite easy.
That flash from Andy, they got him. That's what they needed on Jez's.
That was explosive. Finding Jez's towards the mid lane, now going straight down that with the eyes on the inhibitor. They're going to have 2 minutes on Dragon. After this gets taken, they probably go for that. And they have all the time in the world here to trade for Baron.
I mean, you don't trade this because your Nexus will die. Your Nexus will die. The Baron takes too long to kill. What are they thinking?
That's bad news, Bears. I do not know where that call just came from.
Gamsu can interrupt these, the game's over.
That's not empowered. Transcendent blades through the entire team. That's going to put the nail in the coffin. And after being on their heels for the past 7 minutes, Dignitas is going to take down the Nexus to win their first game of the North American Spring Split.
Wow, Coast with a giant blunder at the end of the game, and Dignitas capitalizes instantly.
Huge play by Gamsu to stop 4 backs as well. Definitely get a replay on that Kiwi Kid initiation for Jezzes.
Oh my God.
What an incredible play.
Dignitas was completely out of options. They were on their back foot. The only thing that could even win them a fight is if they flash and stun Jesses. Did that. They got him out of there. Then they start pushing mid, and Coast forgets that they have a down inhibitor.
I get it.
That must be it.
I get it. We can take Baron fast enough, we'll have a charge recall, and we'll get back in time.
Maybe. Not even close.
Not even.
Because
that's the only option, though.
Yeah.
Because 4 seconds, no.
The minion wave was in the right place for Dignitas for one.
That's true.
When they were trying to do that push.
That was huge.
Which is surprising for Coast maybe, because Coast had so much map control overall. But they get the catch, it's a 4v5. They make the call to try and trade Baron for something in their base, not their actual base. They try to stop the Baron. Gamsu makes the great move.
Yeah.
Has his Aurelia ultimate up. What a perfect champion to interrupt recalls with.
My God.
One little blade through each of them. They get every single person interrupted, and then they just kill the Nexus. 37 minutes in.
Very nice job there. Looking at the game, both teams fought quite hard. I have to say, Dignitas can't expect to win games like this all the time. They were on the back foot. They did find a way through. We'll have to see if both these teams can right the wrongs, however, because there was a bit of stalemating where they didn't know what to do, where kind of vision went to the wayside. They got back another way. Someone was looking out for them.
Hey, it's a new age for Dignitas as well. After all the stuff that people always constantly throw at Dignitas doesn't know how to play around Baron. They're not doing this properly. The 2 times that Coast goes for Baron, Dignitas punishes the enemy greatly. Coast got it on the first one. Dig took 3 kills in the mid lane inhibitor turret. The second time Coast goes for it, Dignitas just ends the game.
Great play coming out all around. Pick and ban phase went pretty well for both teams, so you can't really criticize too much there. They played their compositions as they should. Coast was not afraid to make plays. They were not afraid to take control of this game, and they did so.
They had a lot of control. I mean, if Coast can separate themselves from the emotion of losing that game on that bad Baron call blunder, that was a recoverable blunder as well. If they get caught out in mid lane, Justice is dead. All right, recover, pull back. They get an inhibitor. We defend the Baron. You know, that's what Coast's game plan could have been there. Up until that point, they were playing a good game. And they'll have to try and take that into the rest of the week, because otherwise this can just destroy a new team's mentality.
Well, Dignitas is definitely going to be happy about that one win so far. Like we said, though, it's 2 games coming out of these. And I said before, that's a lot of impact. Maybe not so much for this game because it was close. Coast will know that they can come back into this one fighting. More so for the games that are lopsided, because then you think this has a lot of, impact on what can happen later. This is a game we may lose. Who are we going to beat? Not something that Coast will be looking at. We will see that this game, the second time, probably just as close.
Yeah, Coast had a Dragon advantage and a 1,000 gold advantage when that game ended. But we actually have a replay of that final fight.
Awesome.
Or the final killing
final
of
explosion.
the Nexus.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can see here, as Coast is starting Baron, if we can just roll this right now, they must have thought they had a turret there. And they had a little bit more time, because that inhibitor going down, you can see the bells run off as soon as they started hitting the inhibitor, and then Gamsu.
3 with just the first blade.
And then the final shot to get the Rengar. Just no chance. Chris, as well, gets Mega Nars, not able to stop it, and just nobody can make it back on time. What a finish. He throws out the Emperor's Divide just in case someone comes through, because he can. And that's another thing about this. As the Nexus explodes once again, Azir takes turrets so fast. Because he can consume a soldier to click the turret and just do a whole bunch of damage to the turret right off that. It definitely expedited the process inside the base. But with no inhibitor and no inhibitor turret to defend, it was really fast. I think with or without Nazir, it's still a win for Dignitas with that Coast call.
Yeah, Dignitas knew what to do at the right time. So much credit to them. And the fact that they're able to come out strong again helps the camaraderie of the team, helps the fact that the new team is there. And for both teams being new, I don't really think we saw too many mistakes from the players. It was good to see both teams had the fights they wanted when the synergy was there. Besides the blunder call, I believe we'll go for a whole team on that. Probably one person made it, but both teams show promise for this season.
There were definitely a few very well-executed moments in that fight. Yeah. The fact that Dignitas was pulling back and Coast was showing their presence on the map to push them back that far, was showing a nice measured approach to the game.
Right.
Until the ending. And just everything went out the window.
There's not too much you can do, especially with the pressure that Impaler put in the beginning on Crumbs, especially when that ward was in the bottom towards red. Impaler just kept walking into it. Crumbs would make the options. And then, as we saw, when that ward went away, Crumbs didn't want to put another one down, or the vision was totally gone, or he wasn't tanky enough, like you said, to put more. So it's almost like that ward was their one-track mind for the game. And if it went down, then they were like, well, plan B. What was plan B?
Yeah. I mean, Kobe talked a little bit about the desk, the players on Dignitas that may or may not perform well. He thought Gamsu was going to do quite well. And honestly, even though Chris picked up a lot of kills in the teleport fights, he was very close to pushing Gnar out of lane. And to do that to Gnar, who is probably the strongest top laner we have in the game right now, in lane, is very, very potent. And then even Core JJ and Kiwi Kid, they had a pretty big CS advantage over a Caitlyn in lane, which are, again, pretty positive things for Dignitas to try and build on. One game, you obviously have to watch the rest of the season. There's 18 of them this year, not 28 like we had last year. Can't wait for it.
That's right. So right now we're going to check in with Dash at the analyst desk, the inside story on that win by Dignitas.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to welcome Kiwi Kid and Crumbs to the desk. And I got to be honest, there was a moment there where I wasn't expecting to be talking to you guys, and then we kind of had that really shocking, finish. I mean, did you, Crumbs, as one of the main shot callers of the team, I mean, that had to have blown your mind when you saw them rotate back to Baron with an open inhib.
Oh no! I mean, as soon as we got the pick, he wanted to flash. He's like, I want to flash. I need to flash. And then we got the pick. I flash after, get the Ahri, and then we're like, oh well, it's obvious they just want to go for Baron. We're like, okay, we'll just end. So then that's pretty much it. We're like, oh, they're going for Baron. We'll win.
Was it Gamsu who decided to go back and stop himself, or was that also a call?
I think it was like everyone
was a collective, but I think Gamsu already was going. He was already doing good for him.
Well, so that's got to point to a little bit of the synergy that you guys have developed already. And I know we were talking on the analyst desk prior to the match. We haven't gotten to see this lineup play too often. Got a little sneak peek over at IEM, but your play in Korea, it seems as though that has, paid off at least a little bit in terms of synergistically. You guys are at least now able to expect things from the different players on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think our vision got a lot better, but at least for myself, I ended up getting really baited with that all the time. But I think that we definitely have a lot more synergy going on, and as the weeks progress, that'll improve.
One of the other things that we were talking about on the desk prior to the game is the fact that the champion pool, this split, has grown enormously in terms of things that are viable to play. And we actually pointed out specifically, Kiwi Kid, that Annie is a pick that is back. And we know how much you love to play that roaming support, playmaking support, where you can do exactly things like you did there to end the game. Do you feel like, though, that that's going to be a short-lived thing, seeing as how people are, recognizing that immediately, and it's time to ban that away?
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people still remember I used to only play Annie the first half of the summer split last year. But yeah, I mean, that's good. It opens bans for the team, and honestly, I don't want to just be a one-trick Annie player because I'm trying to be a great support, not. I hope they ban Annie.
Not an Annie bot.
Yeah, I don't want to be Annie bot. We've already got one of those.
What would you say are the other supports then that kind of fill the same role as Annie that you feel you could do the same kind of playmaking stuff on?
Honestly, Annie's not really replaceable. She has the immediate flash stun. I mean, the only other support worthy thing that I can think about the top of my mind is Veigar, who also has a flash stun engage. But
I wouldn't mind seeing some Veigar support.
I've tried it. It's not bad, but you actually you need to put in a lot of games because you need to get really intuitive.
Right.
It's not even arguable that Veigar's stun is definitely a lot harder to hit than Annie's stun.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of familiarity in terms of ranges and things like that. Crumbs, you too, with your champion pool, we mentioned how you are a jungler who is willing to pretty much play anything across the board, and that is super useful in terms of allowing your team the opportunity to get the picks in the solo lanes that they need. Picked up Jarvan here. Was that mostly because you saw the Gnar and it was like, let's not give him that combo? Or
Well, I feel like with the champion pool now, it's mostly just back to the same thing. You got Lee Sin, Jarvan, and then that's pretty much it for now. And then it's like you play Rengar as well, which is also in the meta. And then thank you for the new addition of Rek'Sai, because I really love that one as well. But besides those 4 champions, you're really not playing anything else. I feel like anything below that is a little bit subpar. So you stick to those champions, and then the rest is just, well, you're going to have to deal with it.
Of course. And I have to point out that you had some really aggressive counter jungling in the early stages of the game, going for the Raptors multiple times. One time, unfortunately, getting caught out a little bit, had to flash over the wall. Is this something that you guys are now trying to trend towards? Is like a really more aggressive, like early game play style?
Well, yes, and it's also because the Raptors are pretty much the most broken out of all the camps because they grant that oracles, which once you smite it, you're pretty much safe to go anywhere and gank without being spotted. And if you are, you know where the ward is, you go ahead and kill it. So it allows you to counter jungle really effectively. So if you control both Rays, the enemy just doesn't have as much vision denial as you do, and you are able to get a lot better vision control. So it's just a better camp, to be honest.
Tips for solo queue, for sure. Now, Kiwi Kid, as the support, being the primary, vision provider for the team, how do you play around that now? What are the approaches to knowing that there is this Oracle buff available to people at all times? Are you looking for deeper wards then to catch them in places where they wouldn't expect them to be?
Oracle, like the stupid Razor Beaks to give, it's just... Man, it's just too good. I used to just ward that side of the mid for mid all the time, and now it's like I'm really wary about it because like 75 gold in the early game is a lot, and especially since I like to go mobility boots first, and it doesn't like eating into a sightstone charge isn't as bad as getting mobility boots and then it eats into your actual like green ward. And now I gotta be more careful. I usually like don't do it as deep. And if I do, I'll make sure like Crumbs is like about to be there to counter gank something, or we can make a play off it. And no, I'm actually really happy about our game, and we have a lot to like build off of, and so I'm happy about that.
I do want to approach your duo of being with Core JJ. I mean, we've known you as being, the other half of I'm a Cutie Pie. What's it like to switch that up finally? Because you guys had played together for so long. I have to imagine adjusting to a new duo is rather difficult.
Not really, because I haven't really played support for that long. It's only been like a year, and I'm still really open to like learning how to play the lane, especially because let's be real, like my laning was ass.
Especially.
Yeah. My laning wasn't, the best. And he's taught me a lot so far. And I'm just really excited to like kind of learn how to play the game better.
Well, regardless, you guys did manage to pull out the win on the back of some great playmaking. I do want to jump into a replay. We're going to go about 30 minutes in. It was the first Baron that Coast took, but I want to look at the play you guys made coming off the backside of the Baron. Crumbs, we're going to pull it up on the screen. I'm going to have you walk me through it in terms of, the calls that were made to get the picks and then end up pushing for turrets off of it.
Oh, well, right here we tell JJ to use Scrying Lore to make sure that they're doing Baron or not, and they are. So we see, okay, it's really low. They're going to commit to it. They're very low as well, so it's unwise for them to retreat. So we say, okay, well, just fight in, go. And I'm really far back, so I know that I can't help out at all. So I just go straight to push the lane, and then they go in and clean them up.
All right, so we got to start out here. A fair amount of poke there landed on Jez as you see the Baron buff pop up. At this point, though, are you calling for, Gamsu goes in, so is that his call that he can make that pick?
Yeah, they're all doing their own thing because I'm not there at all. I can't see what's happening. Like, I'm just going straight for the lane. They say we can go, keep going, because Annie wants to go around because she's got mobilities, so she can get a stun for more kills. And then I'm just getting the wave so that once they're doing that, we can just go straight to middle lane and get that. Otherwise, we probably would have just gotten one tower.
Right, so I want to take a look at now because we've seen a couple games here. We saw in Cloud9 versus TSM, Cloud9 had the Baron, they had the first 3 dragons, but they still managed to lose the game. So it seems like there are teams putting a high priority on those 2 global objectives that don't yield gold anymore but yield stats, and they're not finding as much success. Because you guys... You had 1 dragon, but then you ended up going down 3-1 dragons at some point. Also a Baron, but still managed to pull out the win. Do you think that teams are putting too much emphasis on the dragon and the Baron?
Yeah, the more I think about it and the more I play, it doesn't matter. The dragon count doesn't matter until you have 5. It's basically like, if you sacrifice too much for the first 4 dragons, it's probably not worth it.
It's all about the items now. If you have items and you can teamfight, you're going to win. Doesn't matter what the other guy has.
All right, so going into tomorrow, I want to take a look at your matchup. You're playing TIP. This roster has been blown up and then restructured around Zhao Wei Zhao, so you're familiar with him. Are you guys? What's your approach when going at an entirely new roster? Are you looking at the known factors, saying, okay, well, at least we know Zhao Weizhao, so let's play around him? Or are we doing, as our own thing, and then this is kind of like the test the waters?
We got to look at their game today, and off that we'll have a pretty good understanding as to how the team functions, and off that then we can base our plans.
All right, sounds good. Well, I want to congratulate you guys again on that win, as surprising and as abruptly as it did complete. But we're excited to see how you guys come out swinging tomorrow against TIP. We do have to take a quick break, but keep it tuned right here to see if your Twitter question or answer gets read on air, making you the proud owner of a new Challenger Ari skin. Then Winter Fox will battle it out with newcomer Gravity in our third match of the day. The 2015 Spring Split continues after this.
Heard a lot of the matchups between these lanes. I want to see plays being made. They're still going to get the dragon, but it may be a continued fight. Crumb's getting hit up. A few more hits to him. That's Chris's pickup. Jezz's will be going down. He's going, changing on to Kiwi Kid. No! Timbers this fight. That goes down, and it looks like they're going to be going hard on this fight. Gamsu taking a lot of damage. Forced the flash over the wall. That's bad news, Bears. I do not know where that call just came from.
Gamsu can interrupt
this is going to be over. That's not empowered. Transcendent ball.